You're listening to Careers and Cocktails, career talk with a twist, hosted by expert recruiter Renee Frey. Let's get this party started.
Welcome, party people, to Careers and Cocktails. Today, I'm thrilled to have Sheri Marnell joining us. She is one dynamite ex-corporate gal, firecracker, and so accomplished. So I'm going to let her share a little bit about herself. And then we are about to make probably the most complicated drink I've made, a Brandy Old Fashioned, which is her favorite. So tell us about yourself, Sheri.
Yeah, so again, my name is Sheri Marnell. I am currently a lecturer at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, where I teach in the College of Business and Economics. I teach diversity in the workplace for undergraduates as well as retail management. And then I also get the opportunity to teach in our graduate program, our MBA program, team management as well as organizational theory and behavior.
Awesome.
Yes.
And that's my alma mater. I graduated there back in the day. We won't say what year.
Yes. Great school.
It is
Great
so
school.
good. Okay, so the Brandy Old Fashioned is the unofficial official drink of Wisconsin, we just found out. And since we're in Hudson, Wisconsin, it's very fitting. Back in the 1800s, it was a formula of the Old Fashioned was also called a whiskey cocktail. It was the drink of choice for the sporting set, mostly young men who were racing and hunting enthusiasts. So fast forward now, in the state of Wisconsin, when one orders an Old Fashioned, likely it will be 2 ounces of brandy and a pre-mixed concoction of sugar, water, and bitters. And then the pre-mixed ingredients save the steps of combining the drink and gives it the sweetness. So your bartender can also add a splash of Sprite or 7-Up before garnishing it with a cherry and an orange. So many options. So we're going to get started. I'm going to make each drink singularly because we're going to be muddling. So in our glass, I have what do you call this glass?
A stemless glass.
Stemless glass.
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
a very technical term, right?
Perfect. And we are going to add in 1 teaspoon, of simple syrup. So we're going to add that in. And then we need 2 dashes of bitters. And we are using Angorusta. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Apparently this is the bitter of choice. 2 in there. And then an orange wedge. And 1 cherry. And we are going to muddle it in the cup. And it says don't muddle it too much because you don't want the orange rind to be muddled. So I'm just going to skip around the rind and get this all muddled up.
See how much you're learning?
I know, right? I'm so...
You're going to be a master Old Fashioned maker. If you're living in Wisconsin, it's kind of like a must, right?
Right? It has to be. And then we're going to add in the brandy. And we have some E&J brandy, which is 2 ounces. 2 ounces. Yum. Okay, pour that in. And then we are going to add crushed ice and serve. And then we've got to garnish it with the orange.
Make it pretty.
Yeah, It has to be pretty. Orange and a cherry. Okay, you taste this and I'll start making mine.
Looks beautiful.
Let me know what we need to modify.
It's too pretty to drink.
If we need to modify anything, I'll get going on the second one.
I'm going to add a splash.
Oh, yeah, I didn't add the 7-Up. I'm so sorry. Add the 7. Oh, yeah, and I'm trying to pour out the simple syrup.
With a cover on it?
Oh, my God. I promise I can make a cocktail. Okay. Is it good?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so I'm on the second one. I have my glass. I'm adding in my 1 teaspoon simple syrup again, 1 orange wedge, a cherry, muddle all this together. Feel like a pro now making the second one.
And then make one tonight when you get home.
Right. I need a cocktail today, let me tell you. And then 2 ounce. Oh, I forgot the bitters on mine. So 2 drops of bitters. So let me muddle it just a little bit more. Make sure the bitters gets in with the simple syrup and the cherry. Okay. 2 ounces brandy.
So easy, anyone can make it, right?
It is easy. It really is. But just don't forget the 7-Up. I'm not going to forget the 7-Up this time. Okay.
If you want a sweet. If you want just a little, take the edge off a little bit.
Well, and I love bubbles in my cocktails. Okay.
Oh, then add a lot.
So do a splash. Okay.
You want another cherry?
Yes.
Are you a cherry person?
I'm putting the cherry in.
I think sometimes people even put the cherry juice in if you want. Like,
really?
A little bit.
All right.
It's going to be very brandy. Let's watch your face.
Oh, it's good though. It is brandy, but it's what I would call spirit forward. It's not too bad though, spirit forward, because it
warms your belly, doesn't it?
It's like there's something interesting though about the simple syrup bitter mix that I don't feel it's too
spirit forward.
Yeah, I think it's rather drinkable. I
Maybe
like it.
It's your new favorite drink.
Could be. Could be. Cheers.
Cheers is right. Look at that pretty drink.
It is so pretty.
Mm-hmm. Just like the color. The red
it
and
is.
Orange.
I love it too. So Sheri, do you remember how we met?
Well, I remember our mutual friend, Jill Kruzmark, had wanted to get together. She's like, hey, Sheri, my friend Renee works at Target. You guys should work at Target, or you should meet up at Target. And I remember multiple conversations about wanting to get together. And it wasn't until we both graduated, as some people like to say.
Laid off.
That we ended up connecting. And then we ended up finding we had so many mutual friends.
I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring that up because when you're networking, like I have a group of friends who, if they say, hey, Renee, you need to meet this person, I always do.
Yeah.
And with even the instance with the two of us and knowing Jill, and it's so awesome to have another fantastic connection and resource.
Yes. Well, and the fact that we were both lived locally and commuted into the cities. And I agree. I'm the same way. If someone says, hey, you need to meet, I try to make it a priority.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love that. So Sheri, pretend I'm a kindergartner.
Yes.
I'm shrunken down to a third of my size. Explain to me what you do for a living.
So right now, because my career has shifted to education, I teach college students. So it's pretty easy. One of my favorite topics that I teach is diversity in the workplace. So at the end of the day, it's making sure that I'm teaching my college students not only what their rights are from a civil rights perspective in Title VII, but also how do you make sure that you are doing right to other people that you're working with.
Right.
Removing judgment and really making sure that everybody approaches their team with curiosity versus judging, especially if someone says something that's potentially offensive. I like to teach my students to try to assume positive intent and not assume that they're trying to be malicious or mean.
Right. Most people aren't. Most people are like that. You say judgment. It's so funny because when we are taught how to interview, you have to remove so much bias. Like we all have our own bias. Mm-hmm. So how do you get people to do that from your teachings? Yeah,
it's interesting because what I also bring to the classroom is, especially when it comes to diversity in the workplace, there's so much going on right now in the news on varying capacities related to bias, gender pay gaps, lots of things, right? Because diversity is not just about skin color, which is another thing I teach, right? It's also about age and gender, sexual orientation, weight and appearance, things like that, right? So one of the news articles that recently was published is most people in interviews make that judgment of hiring in the first 7 seconds.
7 seconds.
7 seconds is what was just published last month, where I go, how do you make sure you get around that? So some of the things that we talk about specifically with interviewing is very similar to what we do in education is utilizing like a rubric, similar to what we did at Target, right?
Sure.
So how do you, by removing bias, if everybody has the same criteria that you're looking for when you're interviewing somebody, and you really take out what is strong, satisfactory, and not strong, and put a number to it versus just going with your gut, right? It takes out some of that, especially that unconscious bias that we obviously are unconscious about.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and that's why having the interview team gather to discuss a candidate is so critical, because then people can point out if there is bias or things of that nature.
Yeah, the other thing, just to build on that, that we've had a lot of conversations. So what I also do is I have my students interview and research organizations and what their diversity and inclusion policies are. And one of the things a lot of my students this semester was inspired by is the orchestra and how they do blind interviews. So instead of having
more
judgments, so I think it's pretty common amongst most orchestras, but they are judged whether they make the orchestra simply by the sound of their music, not of what they appear like, right? Because at the end of the day, an orchestra, it doesn't matter who's sitting in the seat.
No, it doesn't matter because you can't see them. They're in the, what do you call that? The pit.
Yes. Well, or it's up on stage.
Right.
It's how they produce the sound, right? So lots of my students this semester suggested more organizations doing more blind interviews where, because there's also research that says people naturally have a bias even when they read someone's name.
Really?
Before they even see someone. So some organizations are removing those names. So then you're not aware of what gender they are or potentially what ethnicity or nationality they are. So you're removing some of that unconscious bias. You're right. Because at the end of the day, you just want to hire someone that has the right skills as well as personality that provides that service, depending on what the job you're interviewing for.
That's so fascinating about the name.
Yeah, yes. Well, again, another thing that I teach is a recent term called new racism. So new racism is a term that basically is saying that people are in denial that racism exists today. And there's a lot of facts to show that specifically when you're analyzing the Caucasian population versus the Black population, how easily they're unconsciously changed. Like it's even Black people pay more for a house than a white person. Black people have more issues in the health industry and being concerned from a doctor perspective. So because new racism sadly exists, people don't think that they're making those judgments and those pieces. You know, Black people are pulled over by police more often. Lots of data. There's this term is new racism. So again, it's trying to remove some of that unconscious bias, especially in the interview process of saying, well, what would we do if we did a blind interview? Or what would we do if you just removed names so you didn't know who was walking into the room? So you weren't wondering, oh, I'm going to walk in and a female's going to walk in. Or that name, that's a female name, but I just learned of a male whose name is Sue. Right. You know, so you assume, oh, Sue is coming in. You think a female's coming in and a male comes in. So kind of removing some of those biases.
Fascinating. It's like if you're expecting to get a glass of Coke and someone put in iced tea, your brain would immediately be like, oh my goodness, like the unexpected. So very interesting concept on removing the names and stuff. Fascinating.
Yes, yeah.
So we're going on the party bus.
Oh, yeah.
And who are you going to invite? You can pick anyone. They have to be alive.
Yes. So I am going to choose Ellen DeGeneres because
she's popular one on this party bus.
She's pretty damn funny. I would say I've always Oprah's another one of my fans, and I would say they have a little bit of similarity. But when you say party bus, I feel like Ellen would be really fun to party with.
Oh yeah, well she can dance. Like I've seen her dancing on her show, right?
Yeah, well, and I think laughing and giggling, and especially belly laughs, and I don't know if I've ever watched Ellen not have a good laugh. She's funny. Yeah,
I love it.
She's real.
Well, cheers to the party bus with Ellen. Mm-hmm. We're calling Ellen.
Mm-hmm. Would you want to be on my bus if I invited Ellen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I'd want Snoop Dogg and Bruno Mars.
Huh. I love Snoop Dogg. I've seen him in concert. He's
You have? I'm envious. I have never seen him in concert.
Yeah.
I've seen Bruno many times.
Yes. No, I haven't seen Bruno yet, but Bruno could be fun too.
Right? He would tell us how pretty we are all day.
Yeah, it's very
serenade us.
very smooth, very smooth.
So what can we celebrate with you this week, Sheri?
I have lots to celebrate. One, the semester is over for me at River Falls. So
Congrats.
my students had all their finals on Monday. I haven't officially submitted my grades, but then I also, what I didn't mention earlier is I'm working on getting my PhD.
Of course you are.
I want my sister to call me doctor. And she's like, I'm not going to do that. And people are like, why are you getting your PhD? And I'm like, just so my family can call me doctor. I'm teasing, but not. No, and within that, I've finished all my coursework. So I'm what's considered ABD, which is all but dissertation. So I'm working on my dissertation and my research on innovation leadership and the influence of leaders on people who create product innovation. So where I'm celebrating is I just passed my milestone 7 of 16 milestones, which is a big milestone, and my surveys just went out. So I just received 135 replies back. So
that's great.
I love data and I love analyzing data. So I literally got an email this morning saying, Sheri, not only we got your 120, the population I was looking for, but we actually got 15 extra. So she's like, oh, we got 100.
When do people ever get more than they...
Yes. Yeah. Well, it happened quicker than we thought, which is great. Mm-hmm.
Cheers to all those achievements.
Work in school. I'm a student and a teacher, right? So that's what I tell my students. I was like, hey, I'm a student too. I get it. I've got homework to do as well.
That's funny.
Yes.
So tell us about your career journey. Tell us about it. You've had
very random.
It's not random.
It is. Well, so what I like to kind of summarize is my career journey since I graduated. Gosh, almost.
Don't tell.
Oh, I'll tell. I'll take my age. I don't mind. 20 years ago, I guess I just hit the 20-year mark. I should have got together with my college friends, but it's all about people, process, and product. So my undergraduate degree is apparel design and development, so clothing design and development.
Where'd you go to college?
University of Wisconsin, Stout.
Okay.
So prior to River Falls, I was teaching at Stout. So my career is over 16 years at Target headquarters.
And wait, stop at Target because you held how many jobs at Target?
What did I count? 14 jobs?
So you are really good at change. Tell us about that. How did you pivot into different roles? Yeah. You must strive and change. Most people hate change. So
I strive and change. And I would say, looking back on my career at Target, I was a change agent. Leaders put me in different roles to drive different types of change. I love change and I love the psychology of helping people get through change.
Tell us, how do you love change?
To me, it's just it's exciting. I love continually challenging myself personally. And I believe from a business perspective, because I love business, I have my MBA, my PhD's in business, is that if you can't necessarily be successful in your business, and research shows this too, if you're not constantly changing. So it's important to be out of your comfort zone. Some of the things that I think we all do best is we grow when we're uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Right? I always say change happens outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Or, excuse me, magic happens outside of your comfort zone.
Well, and if you don't push yourself,
then you're stuck in the same place you've always been.
Yeah. So with all of my, I have yet to meet someone who has such a diverse career at Target, where I moved, but I never closed a door. When a leader or a peer or someone in my network said, hey, Sheri, would you be interested in moving to Target Properties and leading electrical engineers?
Oh, seriously?
I'm like, tell me more.
Yeah.
And as I was talking to the various leaders, I'm like, well, what's my team gonna think of a non-engineer being their leader? And they're like, oh, they're not gonna really like you and really get it. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Well, what about my peers? Will my peers in engineering embrace me as someone who's non-engineering? I previously led product engineers. So I led engineers, but a different area at Target.
Sure.
And then when I moved to, and then they're like, no, your peers yeah, they won't really like you either. And I'm like, okay.
You're like, are you setting me up for failure?
But to me, I viewed it as a challenge, right? Like, I think it's also about knowing what you're getting into. And as a leader, every time you change, really understanding who your team is and what they want. And some of my best experiences are when I led electrical engineers and when they had this wall up and I was able to remove that wall was pretty rewarding. But
how did you remove the wall?
Build trust, right? So to me, I believe in servant leadership. I'm there not to be a dictator of what my team should do, but how do I remove roadblocks, right?
The leader we all want, Sheri.
Right. And I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. You can ask the people that I've led before. But it's more about helping motivate my previous team members to do what they want to do and what are the problems and issues they're running across and how do I then remove those and work with leadership to identify areas of streamlining and whatnot. And I'm transparent. There's not things that I hide, and I'm very open that way.
I love it. So talk more about leadership. What do you, if someone is making that, because obviously at Target, you must have made the transition from individual contributor to team lead or team leadership, right? What's the biggest advice you would give somebody transitioning, making that jump into a formalized management position? Yeah,
and I think that's a great question just because I don't believe everybody who's a great individual contributor is a great manager.
Oh, we have proof of that. I have stories about that.
I know. But
even at Target, where multiple people got promoted and then they got demoted, I was like, oh my God, that's never going to be me.
But I wish more organizations understood that, right? Because so many people get promoted because they're doing such a great job individually. And they're like, oh, you need to be a manager because that's just the next step. But that person's just not meant to be a manager. And I wish instead people took the skills needed to be a great manager, leader, and promoted those and really just find a different path for those individual contributors. So to answer your question, the biggest adjustment is remembering you're not a doer anymore.
Right.
And
which is really hard.
And it's okay if your team does it a different way, right?
Totally.
So what I tried to do is helped my team see what my end goal was that I wanted to do and not judge them in the process of getting to that goal. Because it was the managers that I also didn't agree with who micromanaged every step. And I'm like, but what I'm doing is going to get to the same goal. So why do you care that I'm doing this versus this? Like if you want me to get here, let me figure out my own path, right? And then I'm empowered. So I try to treat my team the way that I want to be treated, right? It's the golden rule, right?
Absolutely. So any funny stories about Target
well, I have a lot of embarrassing moments, but...
well, how'd you recover? Tell us one and how you recovered.
Accountable. Oh, gosh. Do I really want this on air or not? Some of my friends would be like, Sheri, you're not going to say this story.
People tell all on this show.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to say, because I'm transparent, right? I just said it. So one of my roles, lots of roles at Target, you work with our counterparts in India, which oftentimes you do a video conference early in the morning just because of the time change, right?
Sure.
So, which is fine. I'm an early morning person, try to avoid the commute. I was very pregnant with one of my 4 children. And I walk into the conference room and it's dark, waiting for the rest of the people to go. It's, again, maybe 6:30 or so in the morning. This is embarrassing. You're going to be like, Sheri, you're really saying this? And
I'm ready.
Everything's off, whatever. And I walk in, I turn on the lights and I put everything down. And when you're pregnant, clothes don't necessarily fit you the right way. Right. So my undergarments were up in the wrong spot. So I adjusted them. And all of a sudden, I hear this, Sheri? Sheri? And I'm like, my camera was on so they could see me. And I couldn't see them. And I'm pretty sure my backside was towards them when I was like, And I love that they're like, oh, we see you. Like, oh, yes,
Oh
yes.
gosh.
But it's owning it, right? Like, oh, sorry, I didn't know that you were there. I think naturally, we're still trying to figure out the cultures of video conferencing. Like, it's super awkward
It is
still.
awkward. It is, yeah.
But just know, when you walk into a room that has a camera, just because you don't see that it's on, someone could be seeing you. And I think naturally we see that now with spyware and
oh my God, that is so
yeah.
funny. I actually think that happened to me too when I was pregnant, when I was wearing a dress
Oh,
and
yeah.
tights. Yeah, it totally happened to me, and someone like grabbed me, and I don't get embarrassed easily, and oh my God, I think my whole body was red.
Well, and especially
After the embarrassment of like, oh my God, they like saw my underwear.
yeah. One, culturally, right? You know, the Indian culture is very different than the American culture in good ways, right? That it was just like, oh, yeah, yep, that was me.
Oh my gosh.
And I was their leader, right? So then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing my boss,
Right.
whatever. But,
That's
it's all good.
doubly
Yes.
embarrassing.
But it's human. We all
We do.
Have
We
embarrassing.
all put on our pants and socks the same
we
way.
do.
So, on the leadership note, how do you, when you've led teams, how did you motivate them?
Yeah, great question. I touched on this a little bit earlier in regards to motivation, but I'm a strong believer of having my team come up with their goals, right? So if at Target, and I'm assuming you probably had this too in your experiences, strategy kind of comes from the top down, right? You do a little bit of bottoms up and you do a little bit of tops down, but from the tops down, you then as a leader create your strategy. And then I really put it on my team to come up with the goals that they wanted to achieve based on that. And really trying to figure out what do they get excited about, right? Like, is it research? Is it coming up with new products or solving a problem? Or what are pain points that they just want to fix because something's broken, right? So having a nice, healthy brainstorming session of like, hey, what are you excited about? Because I'm a strong believer in research also supports it, that if you come up with the idea, you're more apt to actually execute it, right?
Right. Well, because you have passion around it.
Right. Well, and that's what also I thank Target for, and I still do this as an instructor, is I try to practice question-based coaching, right? And I don't know if you've heard of that term before.
Yeah.
But even though you as a leader have an answer, right? So
Absolutely.
your team comes to you and they're like, I've got this problem, blah, blah, blah. I could easily solve it for them. But if I solve it for them, they're not as bought into the solution. So how do you instead step back as a leader and ask questions for them to get to the answer themselves? And
Absolutely.
then they're like, oh, yeah, that's what I need, right?
Yep.
And that's what I enjoy, having those light bulbs go off. And it's funny to be, what I loved at Target was being a leader. And I get that same joy as being an instructor, right? Like I get my students to have those light bulb moments, right? Where you're like, oh, yes. And like I just read over 100 reflection papers, and it's so rewarding. When you sit in a lecture hall with like 50 students and they're just kind of all looking at you staring and you're like, are you getting this?
Right.
Are you understanding, right?
Right.
And then you read those reflections and you're like, oh, I am making a difference, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cheers to that,
yes.
girl.
Yes.
Okay. You were on the negotiations team. You have experience with negotiations. Have you ever negotiated a pay raise for yourself?
I have. What's kind of interesting with that is I never did at Target.
I did. Took me a year.
Huh.
A flipping year.
Yes.
Talk about that in a different episode.
Yeah. But no, I think because I changed jobs so much at Target, every job, I did take a voluntary demotion. I had to sign a piece of paper to voluntarily demote myself to a career path. But again, that's maybe another episode. But my pay didn't change. My pay grade changed. But Target treated me very well financially. I was very fortunate that working for a large company that has that's very profitable, that they treated you really well. But it wasn't until I moved to higher ed that I had to be an advocate for myself. And the biggest advice that I have is, for anyone going into the workforce, is making sure wherever you start in a company, if you start low, it's hard to move up.
Oh, right.
Right? So really making sure that you have that great starting foundation.
Absolutely.
But I also encourage those listening and other people too, to not just look at money.
Right.
You
Most
know?
people don't. Most of the people that we work with, money isn't in their top three.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you got to do what you love and what you're passionate about, because then you're going to thrive and soar and achieve. The money will come.
Yes. And try to understand when you're looking for a job, what am I looking for?
Absolutely.
Right? Like, and what is your number one? Is it flexibility? Is it commute? Is it benefits? Because I never looked at benefits when I moved to Target. You know, I was like,
oh, yeah.
I don't know, I get medical and dental. I don't really care. Oh, what do I have to pay? You know, like whatever, right? But now as a mom of 4, you know, you think about those things, and flexibility and location is more of a priority than money.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, how did you make the jump from corporate America to teaching? Or what would we call it formally? Being a professor, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I skipped over that. Oh, I think I kind of touched on it, that I worked at UW Stout. So I graduated from UW Stout with an apparel design and development degree. I worked and interned at Target, and didn't want to work for a large company. Left for a year. Worked for Stearns Manufacturing, where I designed wetsuits and water ski jackets and hunting gear.
Fun.
So I know more about camouflage than I ever thought. Like, to me, I thought just like camouflage was camouflage. And I'm like, oh, there's hardwoods and dryland and like, what? And then my boss called me back and said, hey, are you sure you don't want to come back to Target? And at the time I was commuting from St. Paul to St. Cloud. Right.
Oh, that's far.
Commute.
Yep.
But to me, Target was endless opportunities. And when I moved to Target, I was asked back from the University of Wisconsin Stout to be on their advisory board.
Awesome.
So twice a year, I went back to Stout, talked not only to Stout about the needs that we needed for students, but also got to network with other alumni as well as non-alumni about what's going on in the industry. Kohl's, Duluth Trading, Stormy Cromer, a lot of the local businesses, JCPenney's came, things like that.
Oh, awesome.
So it was good not only for Target to hear what's going on in other industries, it also was great for me personally, kind of networking. So Dr. Niedermeyer, the past program director at Stout, claimed that I was the longest standing advisory board member. But over that time, they asked like, hey, Sheri, would you ever want to teach a class? And I was like, oh, yeah, that could be really fun. However, being a mom of 4 children and working at Target, which is not a 40-hour, or none of my jobs at Target was a 40-hour work week, I was like, there's no way I could drive to Menominee to teach a class, but something I always wanted to do. So when I was gifted the graduation of Target, I was already looking to leave Target. So I was already networking with 3M and trying to come up with something closer to home.
Sure.
So I just assumed when I was given this gift that I would just keep going that way. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm given this gift. My kids are going older. I haven't had a summer off in 20 some years, started working young. I took time to really enjoy it. And
good for you.
You know, naturally look for a sign. And I'm like, do I really want to go back to what I've always done? Or do I want to try something different? I was at a holiday party. I'm on a couple of nonprofit boards, and I was at a holiday party, and someone's like, oh, well, have you thought about Stout? Teaching at Stout? And I was like, oh, that's funny you ask. Like, that's something I've always wanted to do. But I never thought of it as like, I should start networking to move to higher ed, right?
Sure.
And I literally, no joke, went back to my car that evening after that conversation with a voicemail from Dr. Niedermeyer, and she goes, would this semester be a good semester for you to start teaching? And I was like, well, gosh, you look for a sign. Oh, right?
That's multiple signs.
Yes.
Knock, knock, knock. Yeah. It's pounding now.
So I was like, gosh, I wasn't planning on going back to work right away. And I'm like, how about I take one class, see if I like it? Of course, I loved it. And I was talking to the department chair, and he's like, if you want to stay in higher ed, you need more education. So I immediately took my GMAT, went to River Falls to get my MBA, and have loved it, which is hence now many reasons why I'm pursuing my PhD.
Oh, I love. Cheers to that, Sheri. Yes. I love that story.
But it's a hard transition. A lot of people ask, like, how do you move? And again, networking, right? You just never know when that network is going to pay off.
Oh, and, absolutely.
You do what you love, and eventually it comes around.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is your biggest failure, and how did you overcome it?
Great question. I've had lots of failures, but
Haven't we all?
am an internal optimist.
Me too.
So I don't like to think of them as failures. And an acronym that recently was shared with me, and I'm sure someone listening is going to be like, Sheri, I told you that acronym and I can't remember. But failing is just your first attempt in learning.
Oh, that's on my board, my whiteboard.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
I don't think it was you, though.
No,
was it?
probably not me.
But it's
totally true.
To me, it's how do you just take what just happened, be accountable. Because what's most annoying is the people who aren't accountable. Because I also believe in every situation, even if it's something someone truly did, that there could have been something that you could have done differently. Like, what could have I done differently to prevent that from happening?
Absolutely.
And things like that. So for how many times I have failed, I don't like to view them as failures.
Me either.
Because I also say if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Absolutely.
And that's how you learn, right?
Right.
Like I was also that kid who my parents were always like, she just needs to do her own thing, right? Like you can tell me what not to do, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to fail, right?
Yep.
And then I'll be like, oh yeah, they were right. Yeah, right. But I have to do it yourself, right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So do you have an example for us?
I
call them circumstances. They're just circumstances that arise that you have to evaluate and then figure out if you're going to go through it around, that I call them circumstances.
Yeah. And I would say my biggest one that I think of like what I use for interviews. Now it's funny, stepping away from Target, it really wasn't that big of a failure, but boy, was it a failure to my leaders. I was a buyer and I bought little girls' clothes. So I managed a $250 million business. So I bought all the clothes for all 1,800 stores. And what you have to do as a buyer, one of many things, is decide what you want to promote, what you want to put in the circular.
Sure.
So I chose this really cute, one of the brands I bought was Genuine Kids. It was the Oshkosh brand.
Oh, yeah.
It's no longer there, but I chose this really cute denim dress. So I'm like, oh yeah, let's put this denim dress in. Denim was a big statement. Dresses were a big statement. Like, let's just kind of stand behind that. But I failed to remember that I didn't put that dress in all stores.
Oh.
So that picture was put in the circular that wasn't available in all stores. And I don't know if those listening or have ever been to a spot where you go to a store and you're like, I want this dress. And they're like, sorry, we don't carry that dress, right? Which, again, I learned my lesson as soon as it happened. But it was also disappointing the guests. How do you kind of rebuild that? What's your alternative promotion you're going to offer for them? Things like that it just was caught too late in the process. But, you live and learn. And I never did it again. Right? Like that's, oh yeah, I was accountable. I said, too. Crap, I messed up.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, I know.
Can't be the first
now
person.
what's plan B? We got to figure it out.
Right.
And then you figured it out.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what's the best advice you've ever received, Sheri?
Yeah, great question. What is the best advice that I've ever received? I know I'm going to probably think of something after we're done talking about this. But I would say at the end of the day, this is the best advice that I actually give. So two things, I guess. One, the best advice isn't necessarily career advice, but personal financial advice. So
hey, I love
my
it.
financial planner is going to be really happy about this. But my brother told me when you graduate from college, from your 401k,
yes,
to match whatever the company matches.
Absolutely.
I can't remember
free money.
But the best advice was, so let's say you do 6%, or I can't remember what Target offered.
I think it was 6%.
But he said then every raise you get after that, take half of that raise and increase your savings, right? So it's money you didn't know, right? So you get like a 5% raise. I don't know what that 5% is. I haven't lived with that extra 5%. So take 2.5 and save it, and you still get
smart
2.5, right?
Yep.
So soon you have maxed out your retirement savings, and then the earlier you do that, it just compounds, right?
Absolutely.
So the earlier you can max that out from an age perspective is great.
That is great advice.
Yes.
Everyone needs that advice because I know there are companies where employers provide the 401k match and the employees don't take advantage of it. It blows my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm like, that is free money. Take the free money.
But what's hard is when you come from, right out of college, you're like, oh, I don't have any money. I've got debt. I want to buy a new car. And you're like, no, don't do those things, right? So it's how do you encourage those people? But other advice I would say that I've received throughout the years that I now end each of my lectures with is, again, we all need to stop judging, right? So we talked about that, right? So instead of judging, approach a situation with curiosity, right? So as soon as you start judging a situation, you are pissed because someone cut you off in traffic, right? And you're like, well, I wonder why they cut me off. I wonder what hard they're going through, right? One that Greg Steinhoffel, I will always remember, which is our past CEO at Target, always said, never say never. Right?
Yeah, that actually is something that I learned from my mom.
Yeah.
Never say never.
Because
my mom says never
know.
say never and never say always.
Oh, well, that's the other word I tell my students, right? It's like, or all, right? Like, all people at Target do this. All people who drive Lexuses are this way, right? Like whatever that is, right? So, because again, you just kind of never know. And then the last thing I try to encourage my students on, and this is a mindset change, right? So how do we change our mindsets? Instead of saying, I have to do this, I have to go to work today, I have to, clean the toilet or whatever. Instead, how do you instead say, I get to?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like, I get to go to work today.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people who want a job that don't have a job,
right?
Or, wow, I get to have a job. So I have food in my refrigerator, things like that.
I love that.
Yes.
I'm a huge mindset person as well.
Yes.
So you just gave a ton of great advice.
Yes.
That was my next question. So you basically answered it.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I foreshadowed.
You did foreshadow. So where can we find you, Sheri? After you drink your...
Everywhere. So I tell my students too, it's like once I meet people, you're part of my community, right? So I love helping. So my purpose in life is helping other people, and I love making those connections. You can obviously find me on LinkedIn, Sheri Marnell. You can
S-H-R-I.
Oh, S-H-E-R-I.
Oh,
yeah.
I missed the E.
Yes. Sheri Marnell, M-A-R-N-E-L-L. You can always find me in Hudson. I love Hudson. I'm stuck in a very good way into this community, and I love this community.
Me too.
Yes, or you can also find me at UW River Falls. I'm in South Hall. 3rd floor is my office.
Awesome.
I teach in South Hall, but I also, my MBA courses that I teach are at the Hudson campus.
Awesome.
Which are great too. But I love staying connected. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. I love, again, making those connections.
Yeah, you sure do. And I'm so grateful to have you here with all your value bombs that you shared. It's tremendous for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. It's kind of fun to be invited.
Absolutely.
Do you want to be invited to have a cocktail and chat? Yeah.
Well, and then we have to do part 2, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
For all of you hiring leaders, if you want the secrets to hiring the best talent, go to careersandcocktails.com to download your free hiring guide. For all of you frustrated job seekers who want to love your Mondays, you can go to careersandcocktails.com to learn where to purchase my book, I Hate Mondays. And if you have liked this, be sure to click the bell, subscribe, share it with everyone you know. And if you're listening on iTunes, if you would submit a review, take just 2 seconds, we would be entirely grateful. Until next time, cheers.